All right, Shalom family. It's your brother Kanaiba coming at you again with this video titled The One-Way Street to the Kingdom. Okay, so the title is pretty self-explanatory. All right, it's pretty straightforward. No pun intended. But yeah, there's only one way to make it to the kingdom. There's only one path. But we're living in a day and age where there's so many different teachings, so many different ideologies, philosophies about, how to make it in life. Not so much how to make it in life, but to make it to the kingdom. That's the focus. But that's not true. There's only one way to make it to the kingdom. On a two-dimensional level. If you have a destination that you're trying to get to, say you're driving in your car, you're trying to get to a certain destination, a lot of times there's more than one way to get there. But in this instance, that's not how it is, okay? If you want to make it to the kingdom of heaven, you have to stay on that straight and narrow path, okay? So let's get into the scriptures and see what we have, all right? This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 30 and verse 20, and it reads, "And though the Lord give you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, yet shall not thy teachers be removed into a corner any more, but thine eyes shall see thy teachers." So notice the end of the verse says, "But thine eyes shall see thy teachers." So what does that let us know? That there was a point in time where the true teachers of the Most High were not being heard. Okay? There was a point in time where they were silent, so to speak. Okay? But there's a time when you are going to hear them. And we're actually in that time right now. The true teachers of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. All right. So let's get to the next verse. Verse 21. And it reads, "And thine ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, This is the way, walk ye in it, when ye turn to the right hand, and when ye turn to the left." So notice the beginning of verse 21 says, "And thine ears shall hear a word behind thee." So what does this let us know? This lets us know that one of two things is happening. When you hear a word behind you, one of two things are happening. Someone's either trying to get your attention, or you actually heard that person and you're ignoring them. You're going on about your day. Okay? And all you have to do is simply turn on YouTube and look at some of the brothers that's out there on the streets doing the work and tell me that those two scenarios are not true. Okay? But continuing on. Saying, "This is the way, walk ye in it." So this is letting us know that the true teachers of the Most High are going to give you a word saying, "This is the way, walk ye in it." So the true teachers are going to tell you that this is the way to the kingdom. This is the way to everlasting life. They're going to give you the directions to get to that straight and narrow path, that one-way street, the only street, the only path to make it to the kingdom, the only path to actually get to the Father. Okay? The rest of the verse goes on to say, "When ye turn to the right hand, and when ye turn to the left." Now, from a two-dimensional perspective, what that actually means when you turn to the right hand or when you turn to the left. When you out there on the streets, you have people walking to and fro all the time. So the brothers, when they're out there teaching, you got people walking to the left and right, passing, going to and fro. But on this channel, we look at things how? from a biblical and a spiritual vantage point. When it says, when you turn to the right hand and when you turn to the left, that's actually talking about walking away from the law, statutes, and commandments, which I'm going to get into later on in this video. Okay. So let's go to the Apocrypha dealing with turning to the right hand and to the left hand. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 7 and verse 6, and it reads, "There is also another thing. A city is builded and set upon a broad field, and is full of all good things." Okay. So this city that's built and set upon a broad field, this is actually talking about the kingdom. Okay. That's the topic matter. All right. Let's look at the next verse. Verse 7, and it reads, "The entrance thereof is narrow, and is set in a dangerous place to fall, like as if there were a fire on the right hand, and on the left a deep water." So what does this let us know? This lets us know if you turn to the right hand or to the left hand, you're going to run into destruction. All right. That's what that fire on the right hand and that deep water on the left represent. It represents destruction. Okay. Even when you read the book of Proverbs chapter 14 and 12, it tells you that there's a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the ways thereof are the ways of death, or the end thereof are the ways of death. Okay. So that right path or that left path, that detour, it may seem right to you at first, but if you detour from that straight and narrow path, you're going to run into destruction. Okay. And what does that let us know about the people that we read about in Proverbs chapter 30? Again, it talked about them going from the right to the left as well, roughly paraphrasing. So that lets us know what? That originally, before they heard that word behind them, they were also on the path to destruction. Okay. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 7 and verse 13. And it reads, "Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat." So we see here, Yahweh Shai, who the world knows as Jesus Christ, he is pretty much quoting what we just read in 2nd Esdras chapter 7. Okay. He is expounding on this, telling us to stay on that straight and narrow path, because if you don't, it's going to lead to destruction if you turn where? To the left or to the right. Why? We read about that fire on the right and that deep water on the left. That just represents destruction. Okay. So the end of the verse reads, "And many there be which go thereat," talking about go to the way of destruction. So that lets us know that, these people, they either turned to the left or to the right. They didn't stay on that straight and narrow path. That goes back to the people in Proverbs chapter 30, whom the brothers were trying to give the word to. Okay, they went on about their day, not knowing that they were leading a life that was going to lead them to death or destruction. Okay. Why? Because, let's be honest. Our people, they're not keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. And we already know what? That the wages of sin is death. Okay. What is sin? According to the Bible, 1 John 3 and 4 says what? That sin is the transgression of the law. Okay. So now continuing on to verse 14, and it reads, "Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it." Okay. So this goes right back to 2nd Esdras chapter 7. Okay. that straight and narrow gate which leadeth to life. And what is that life? That life is everlasting life, okay? That straight and narrow gate leads to the kingdom. And notice it says, and few there be that find it. Okay, so what does that let us know? If there be only but a few that find this way to life, that stay on this straight and narrow gate, that would mean that the majority of the world are on the wrong path. And there's a good portion of the world that actually thinks they're on the right path, but they're on a path in which the ends thereof are the ways of death. Okay, going right back to Proverbs 14 and 12. All right. So now let's talk a little bit more about this straight and narrow path. Okay, the straight gate. What exactly is this straight and narrow path? This straight gate that's going to lead to everlasting life. Okay, because we already talked about the law, statutes, and commandments, which is correct. But what ultimately is this straight and narrow path? Because it's all going to tie in together once we go over the precepts. All right. So now let's move on to the book of John, chapter 14 and verse 6. And let's see what it says. This is the book of John, chapter 14 and verse 6. And it says, and Yahushua saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father, but by me. Here's our answer. That straight and narrow path, that straight gate is Yahushua, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ. All right. How do we know this? Because he started off the verse by saying what? I am the way. This sounds familiar, right? This goes right back to Proverbs chapter 30. Okay. Remember what we read in verse 21. The true teachers of the Most High are going to be saying, this is the way. Walk ye in it. So that way that we're supposed to be walking in is referring to Yahushua. We are supposed to be walking in his footsteps. Okay. When you walk in his footsteps, you're walking on that straight and narrow path that leads to everlasting life, that leads to the kingdom, that leads to the heavenly Father. Okay. Now, Yahushua kept the law, statutes, and commandments. And remember, I made a statement towards the beginning of the video when I said that when you turn to the right hand and to the left hand, as said in verse 21 of Isaiah, the 30th chapter, that's referring to turning away from the law, statutes, and commandments. So now let's go to the book of Joshua and prove that. All right. This is the book of Joshua, chapter 1 and verse 7. And it reads, only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law, which Moses, my servant, commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. So notice in this verse, the topic matter is what? The laws, statutes, and commandments. But notice how Moses said what? Not to turn from it to the right hand or to the left. So what is Moses ultimately saying in the spirit? That you have to stay on that straight and narrow path. Okay, you have to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments. Okay, why? We already said it. Because the wages of sin is what? Death. Okay, and what is sin? Sin is the transgression of the law. Okay, so now we have a little more clarification about Isaiah chapter 30 and verse 21. Because remember, the teachers are going to be saying what? This is the way, walk ye in it. So the way that we're supposed to walk in is what? The laws, statutes, and commandments. Because the end of the verse says what? When ye turn to the right hand and when ye turn to the left. Now in Joshua chapter 1 and verse 7, we already see that Moses told us not to turn to the right hand or to the left in regards to the law. So that has to be what this is talking about in Isaiah chapter 30 and verse 21. But remember, this all goes back to Yahweh Shai, who the world calls Jesus Christ. He is the way. So how does this all tie in together? Because he kept the law, statutes, and commandments, right? Let's take a look at this. This is the book of 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 21. And it reads, For even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that ye should follow his steps. So let's take a look at the end of the verse. It reads, leaving us an example, that ye should follow his steps. So Christ left us an example. And what is that example? You're supposed to walk in his footsteps. So when you walk in the footsteps of Christ, you're going to walk that straight and narrow path that leads to everlasting life. Okay? When you walk in his footsteps, you're not going to turn to the right or to the left away from the law, statutes, and commandments. Why is that? Let's look at the next verse. And it reads, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. Okay? So in the end of verse 21, it tells us that Christ left us an example to walk in his footsteps. And what is that example? The very first thing mentioned in verse 22 is what? He did no sin. Okay? Now, what is sin biblically defined? 1 John 3 and 4 tells us what? That sin is the transgression of the law. So ultimately, the example that Christ left us was to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments. Okay? And so the end of the verse goes on to say, neither was guile found in his mouth. And the word guile goes into deceit. So it's letting us know, he kept the law both in word and in deed. Okay? There wasn't any deceit found in his mouth. All right? But I believe this is actually a good place to actually bring it to an end. I think I hit the most important points. There's only one path to get to the kingdom. There's only one path to get to the Father. All right. And that's through Yahweh Shai. And the keeping of the law, statutes, and commandments. You have to follow his example. But again, you're not going to follow his example if you don't have faith in him. Okay. Faith is paramount. Okay. You have to first have faith in Yahweh Shai, and then you have to apply the works. All right. So with that, I'm going to end it here. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. And until next time, Shalom, family.